Paul Parabinos, Monster Energy Pro Circuit Kawasaki. I work for Blake Baggett, and this is Behind the Bars. I would say he's not really, doesn't really have an engine preference. I mean, he's pretty easy to work for, I'd say. Anything that we tune with the engine, we do through mapping or gearing, and we don't really vary a whole lot. So, in the beginning, the EFI stuff was, I wouldn't say difficult, but it was time consuming at first, I guess, in the beginning. And, you know, going from a carburetor to that, but I'd say we're pretty on top of it now, and you can do a lot with it. So, and now that we're using Get ECUs and Get systems, it enables us to do a whole lot more than what we were able to do before. So we're quite happy with what we're using, and we can do a lot of things with it. Blake likes the suspension, I would say, just how anybody does. I mean, he wants it to work awesome. It's a little plush in the beginning, and it progressively gets stiffer, just like anything. But he knows what he likes, and he knows what he wants, and you know, he's easy to test with, I'd say, because he'll shoot you straight. I mean, if he doesn't feel anything, he'll tell you, and if it's bad, he'll tell you. If it's good, he'll tell you. So, you know, it just takes time to test and figure out what he wants. And Blake's unbelievably easy on equipment. The easiest guy I've worked for sure. I mean, he rides the bike really how it should be ridden. He doesn't rev it. He doesn't drag the brakes. Doesn't overuse the clutch. He rides the bike really good, and yeah, in that respect, he's great on equipment and great to work for in that respect. Brakes, I would say he's most finicky about the front brake. He wants it to be extremely powerful and still feel hard in his finger, which is hard to achieve, because if you want a more powerful brake, it usually feels more spongy in the hand, more progressive. But we've experimented with different master cylinders, and we have our standard KHI caliper that we always use. And I think we got it to where he enjoys it now. And his rear brake, as far as his rear brake goes, he just wants it to be immediate. And his pedal's quite low compared to everyone else, but other than that, pretty standard. The only other thing that we've done was we've reduced the swing on the throttle, so he doesn't have to turn it as far to get to wide open. And that's pretty much the only change we've made for his wrist. Cooling on the 250F, especially with Blake, isn't really that big of a deal. We run different radiators at some of the tougher races like Southwick, but that's more for the core size and for sand buildup, not so much for the heat. But we will run the bigger races if it's been really hot, but it's been quite cool this year. None of the races have been that bad, and Blake, like I said, doesn't really rev it as bad as others. We have the coolant catch can, but that's been on our bike since I've worked here, and that's just coolant that overflows, flows into the can, and as the bike cools down, it siphons back into the system, so we don't lose as much coolant. Yeah, bigger fuel tanks. Our fuel tank is big enough that we haven't actually been topping off after the hot lap even. Our fuel tank's quite big, and again, fuel has a lot to do with the way the rider rides the bike. Our fuel tanks are quite big, they're carbon, and like I said, we're not topping off after the parade laps even. Maybe at Southwick I think I did, but that's about it. Gearing we've been messing with a little bit this year. Typically we use a 1348. Right now on his bike I have a 1347 just because he's so light, and our bikes I think are quite good and quite aggressive, so we're trying to detune them a little bit, mainly for the start, because we don't want them to have to fight the wheelie the whole time. We want them to be able to use the whole power of the bike. So right now 1347, and we might change, but we don't vary much from that area pretty much on gearing. Hey TransWorld, thanks for watching Behind the Bars, and check out Blake Baggett on the Bike Track today.